Hi, welcome to another episode of our self management training series. I'm Angela Tran as part of Evo Skills, and we're giving this training series complimentary. So let's get started. In this episode, we're covering basic human needs. So, tagline is the hidden roots of our beliefs and a deep dive into human motivation. So, if you're new to the series, this is the fourth episode. And the last three, I do go over the introduction of self management and the meaning of it, and also self awareness. And last episode was about our evolutionary brain. So, if you're interested in learning all about it, please feel free to watch the past episodes. Just a disclaimer, the information provided in this episode is for general informational purposes only and is not intended to substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. By watching or listening to this episode, you acknowledge that the creator is not liable for any actions taken based on the information provided. All right. So, this series is for you if you're looking to develop essential life skills, if you want to achieve greater professional or personal success, or you want to improve your focus and productivity. So, I typically like to start off with a recap of the last episode just to orient my audience as to where we are. So, the last episode, I cover four topics: the triune brain theory, a hand model of the brain tool, our survival responses, and then a stress response log, which is a free downloadable worksheet. So, what exactly is the triune brain? But before we get to that, this part or these first few episodes is progressing along kind of with our meta skills framework, a level of progression. So we're still in the level 2 of C, which is highly focused on self awareness, which is about objectively observing your internal self. So you'll notice that these episodes, there's a lot of observing and practicing what you're seeing in your internal state of mind rather than taking action to change any behaviors yet. I think this step, especially as part of self management, has been sometimes overlooked. A lot of times we're excited to get started, but I do think if we focus on just being able to see ourselves and kind of, and what I'm doing is giving frameworks to allow us to do that and tools. So, just a recap, I covered the hand model and how to leverage it for those who remember. Actually, I'm going to try to switch to maybe a different view and see if that helps. So, the hand model is about having our hands, using our hands as a model conceptually of the brain. Remember, it has been pretty much disproven that, our brains are nicely organized into three different areas, but rather I'm using this is more of conceptual. So this is our brainstem. This is our limbic system, which are emotions and memories, and then this is our they call the neocortex and prefrontal cortex. So kind of three parts. So this brainstem part is our usually involuntary, kind of our heart beating, breathing, and things like they'll call it the reptilian brain, and then limbic. So when it's all connected, you'll see here that means we are regulated and connected. So we are balanced and we can think usually more rationally before reacting. Now, if we flipped our lid, and last time, if you watched it, there's an example that means really we're coming from usually like a more survival response, right? We're thinking that we either under attack or threat, and we're ready to fight or flight without really thinking through it. So that's the hand model. Go back to our next slide. So it also cover the stress levels and with the hand model as well. So when we are, I would say, regulated stress. So stress is not always bad. We can actually use the stress response to help us in a more positive way. So for example, if I'm presenting, there's no doubt a level of nervousness and stress, but that energy can be channeled into kind of how I present, right? Rather than if it becomes a bit more fight or flight, I could be avoiding this or not recording this or not even presenting it with this amount of energy, right? I might be shutting down as well. So typically that's regulated stress. And in the hand model, we're kind of connected. Now, once we move into a situation that we perceive a threat, I can break it down to three categories. We're at low stress, medium stress, or high stress. So at low amount of stress, you're thinking you're kind of uncomfortable, right? So those minds are maybe a little bit loosely connected, and but you're no undoubtedly kind of still perceiving a threat. So I might walk into a meeting if I already have this low amount of stress, thinking I need to defend myself or kind of attack or offend somebody else, right? So we're in a working environment, and I can definitely picture myself in these situations back in my corporate life, right? I walk in versus if I'm walking into a meeting, I'll be like, hey, cool, I'm here to solve a problem. Though there might be stress, but I don't perceive the situation as a threat, right? Medium is when definitely alert, right? I'm walking into a meeting where I'm thinking, oh my gosh, might something's going to happen. I can't believe that they would say this. I can't, your mind's already kind of thinking a lot of negative thoughts, and really you're at the forefront. I'm at the forefront to really anything that's said I perceive is an attack or anything, I might go or might be defensive, right? So if you can think about situations like that, we're walking in kind of with this medium level of stress. Now if you're high stress, that's when I really actively respond to a threat. I might even avoid the meeting, so don't even go. And to be quite frank, I probably tried that a couple times. I went through an example. Maybe there's another conflicting meeting, I was like, hey, you know what, my team can handle it, let's let somebody else go. Or if there's or I might cancel the meeting because that's how strongly I feel about, I want to avoid it, right? I'm just trying to flee. So again, this is just something for you to observe your own mind, just to be more aware when you walk into a situation at what stress level you're at. So with that, now I mentioned it in the last slide already. There's typical kind of five stress responses. Fight or flight is probably the most common ones that we know. We're in there, really aggressive or kind of attacking. And this doesn't mean like physical. This can also mean kind of verbal. Again, I like to use example of meetings when times like you might get defensive, or I might get a little bit, or maybe you hear people kind of giving the sarcasm or that passive aggressive comment, right? It's them kind of fighting back, or you're fighting back as well. Flight is you're avoiding and just trying to like not even be there. Freeze is going to the meeting and just like not knowing what to say. Again, these are kind of, I'm just giving an example of meetings. Really, it becomes kind of unproductive, right? Faint is a numbing or association. I also do this. So after a stressful day, I do end up watching a lot of, binge watching TV, right? As a way to kind of I would say it's clear my mind, but it's a form of kind of numbing, right? Kind of just watching and shutting everything down just so I can't feel or avoid the whatever the day has brought me. Or friend people pleasing, so trying to appease others to avoid conflict or rejection. So we went over that last episode. I go in more detail. There's also a stress response log that was released with the last episode. It is available out there at our website, evo-skills.com, under digital downloads. So this is to help us practice situations, observing, hey, in this situation, what did I do? Was I entering the situation with a medium amount of stress, high stress, and then what was my reaction to it? Again, we're kind of practicing seeing how our behaviors and how we feel, so that when we move on to the next skill level of doing, I believe it will be easier to kind of find the root cause and using the right tools to really be able to manage the behavior, and then therefore get the outcome that you want. So that is out there. So now in this episode, there are 5 new topics. So the first one is, it's all about needs today. So in light of Valentine's coming out and today's Galentine's, thought it'd be good, and it flows well with the series about understanding our needs. So first one I'm gonna go over is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Then I'm gonna go over a newer one, which is 7 Primal Needs by Mike Foster. And then number 3 is what happens when our needs are not met. And then how do these needs relate to our core beliefs? And then we'll end with a tool called downward arrow. So if you watch those prior episodes, this would be kind of a repeat. That tool is a repeat, but I did add in something else to help build the connection to our basic needs. So first topic, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you were like me and into school probably in the 90s or early 2000s, um, I do remember reading or actually learning this hierarchy. So it was first introduced by a American scientist named Abraham Maslow. He introduced this concept in the theory of human motivation and also a book called Motivation Personality in the 40s and 50s. Now, while later research doesn't support that human needs follow a hierarchy, it still provides us a simple framework to understand. So essentially, what he's saying is that there's a pyramid of needs and we need it kind of in that order. Although later, I think he tried to steer away from it in his later life and his later writing. Um, but on the bottom, the biggest part is our physiological. So food, water, breathing, again, those kind of involuntary, usual, or, breathing and heart beating is involuntary, but these are just basic needs for survival, right? We think about, oh, if we don't get enough water, we don't get enough food, it'll definitely put us in a stress situation, right? Next one he puts is safety. So security, having resources, having a roof over our head, protecting from natural hazards to animals or any type of kind of that type of threat. Then after that, then it's saying love and belonging. So friendship, family, um, love, romantic relationships, and things like that. After that is esteem, so achievement, self-esteem, respect to others, respect by others, and then the peak of it is self-actualization, which is he says morality, creativity, problem solving, lack of prejudice. So really just self-actualizing, right? I think yoga also has this kind of concept of the truth, right? Kind of knowing yourself really well and accepting that. So that's he describes as will reach their full potential when you're self-actualized, and in his theory, it's saying must be met before kind of your basic needs must be met before self-actualization can be achieved. Now, again, this has probably been disproven if you think about it. I mean, you can tip this pyramid upside down, and you can see that some artists, right? If a starving artist exists, so maybe they really actually really love their art, but they're struggling to make a living and things like that, right? So that's why kind of the hierarchy doesn't quite, I guess, represent the reality now, but I still think it's a very simple way conceptually of understanding it. So now, on to a more modern, this I believe is released. The Seven Primal Questions by Mike Foster was released probably in the early, I want to say 2000. So, but I still think it's related to Maslow. It's about needs, except he calls them different things. So essentially, he did a research amongst 3,000 participants and interviewing, and discovered that all of us have seven primal needs, and he puts them into a question format. So the first one is, am I safe? Am I secure? Am I loved? Am I wanted? Am I successful? Am I good enough? And do I have purpose? Now, the nice thing is that he actually has a free assessment out there. So if you go to the site and take it, you can see which one, what he calls is the primal question. And I do recommend the book. It was a very, very short listen. I did the audio version, but I found it pretty enlightening and really simple to understand kind of our motivation, what drives us or what puts us into certain chaotic behaviors. So I do have two examples of the needs kind of shown here. So just for example, am I love Q3? So he says that one of these will be our kind of our primal that drives our behaviors and we like. So if you are I am I love, the Q3 is gifted at loving and caring for others, and they create safe, loving environments for others to feel seen, heard, and treasured. So basically, he said our primal question also becomes our kind of a strength. So our strength is also a weakness. At their core, they crave being loved, and the thought of being dismissed, unheard, or unseen is a deep fear. When they are at their best, they're nurturing, kind, and empathetic. However, when they're at their scramble, they tend to become people pleasers or overgive, engage in codependent behaviors. So I'm going to go to the next slide and explain kind of the big idea in his book is. And again, definitely encouraged to read very simple diagrams and reading. So what he's saying is that once the seven questions and that assessment can help you determine that, one will emerge kind of as the top. And that question is if that question is your primal question and it's met with a yes, life is good. So am I loved? Just in that example. Um, if I feel love from others or, my spouse or my family or whatever the case, life is good. But in my mind, if I think that I am not loved, and or a maybe, then I go to the scramble, whoever it is, and you get these chaotic behaviors and you're searching to find that love. And then until you get the yes, and that yes could be very elusive, then life is good. So that's the kind of big theory. Of course, it goes into a lot more detail on each one. So, what does this all mean? Um, Taking these two concepts together and this simple kind of plus and equals, if this is what we realize, if our physiological needs are met, if we feel safe and secure, if we feel loved and wanted, and we feel enough purpose or success, life is good. We're happy. We usually are kind of feel fulfilled, right? I'm not hungry. I'm not thirsty. I'm not thinking that my safety is in threat, or I'm not secure, or and love and wanted is about belonging, right? Humans need to feel a sense of belonging and feel that. And then also for yourself, right? So I kind of broke it down into combine those and put it down to four kind of big buckets. And there's no particular order or kind of hierarchy, but just these four buckets. The lastly, kind of like myself, if I feel like I'm enough, I have a sense of purpose, life is good. We're all good, no threat. Our minds are at peace, at calm. Now, most of the time, I would say, or a lot of the times, unfortunately, our minds aren't thinking that, right? So when one of these needs or even half of these needs are unmet, our brain kind of starts to perceive a threat. Because again, these are kind of these basic human needs, right? So for example, if I feel not loved, right, subtract the love, my brain will go threat. And if you've ever felt this way, especially for women, or I'll just stick with women just because I am one. But if you're a woman and you're thinking, and maybe you've seen it, even if you don't experience it, if you've seen it on TV a lot. I watch things like Love Is Blind. You'll hear this phrase a lot. You hear like women say, "I just want to be loved the way I deserve to be loved," right? Like you'll hear something along that line, and I fell into that as well. Is right in that moment they feel not loved. And you'll start to see, like, especially in these reality TV shows, they'll go into these very weird and they start fighting with the other person, or they start retreating and these very kind of sometimes aggressive behaviors. Well, it's because our brain is thinking like we don't have something, we're lacking something. So there's a threat. So what happens, right? Just like in episode 3, I mentioned, it is, our brain is perceiving a threat. Therefore, it's releasing cortisol, or releasing adrenaline, really increasing our heart rate. And it makes it really hard physiologically to calm down, right? Even as simple as love, right? You would think that's usually not a threatening situation, but since it is a need of belonging and being wanted, our brain treats it like there is something that we are being threatened, right? And we can't control that. So I've definitely been in that situation, I would say. So the other big concept here is, how does this need, kind of affect a core belief, or is there a relationship, right? So again, in the 7 Primal Questions book by Mike Foster, he also goes through what happens, right? So if our caregiver, typically in our childhood, responded with a no or maybe of these needs, it may become a part like of our negative core belief, right? So when I was young, if, we are, again, kind of basic human needs, we're not thinking much, am I safe, right? And somehow our caregiver sent the message. It doesn't have to be, 100% of the time. It just could be a very kind of a memorable time, I would say, that us as a child felt unsafe, right? And in our minds now, we will have this core belief that I am not safe. So then it becomes anything that comes, then you're starting off almost like a level 1 stress almost when it comes to safety, right? And not really seeing it, right, with that core belief. Same thing, right? My big one is definitely somewhere between love and wanted. I felt there's a couple of situations that I felt as a child very abandoned. So now, as an adult, and even in my relationship with my husband, sadly, I sometimes perceive when he leaves, to go have fun or do something, that he doesn't love me. Because in my mind, I had placed that core belief as a child. And it took, I would say, years of therapy to kind of get there, for me to understand that that's what happened. In fact, it was so strong that even when I traveled for work and maybe I went a weekend early and he came with me, the fact that he was going back home to our kids and I knew I was there for work, I would still cry and tear up. I don't think it was because it was, I missed him so much, but it was the fact that my inner child, myself, was coming back up, that in that moment I perceived I was in love, and it was very painful to go keep reliving that. So anyway, so later I will kind of go through more in detail why that happens and things like that. But for now, just know that it seems like, if again, as a childhood, if we received any of these as a no or maybe, it's very plausible that we would have formed a core belief around it, a negative core belief, that is. So for example, in this from episode 2, we talk about core beliefs. And so in this I'm not worthy kind of lens can stem from not feeling worthy of love or attention, right? So in a child, they don't feel love or attention. They don't, in there. So now they have a core belief, I'm not worthy. So for example, you meet a new person and think about asking them to go out for coffee. If that core belief is I'm not worthy, the behavior might be, why would they ever go out with me? Or that's a thought, and then does not ask the person out. Versus if I am worthy, and the thought might be, oh, we might have fun to go together, and they will ask, then I will ask the person to go out to coffee with me. So kind of that connection. So this is the example from the downward arrow worksheet in episode 2. So in there, I go over a form of Socratic questioning to help us identify core beliefs. So I'm going to go through this example, and if you can, kind of, this should be pretty obvious which core belief that I spoke about before. Which basic need that I spoke about before drives this core belief. So, in this situation, whether to share my ideas in a brainstorming meeting or not, right? That's a situation. So, what is one negative thought that I had while this is happening? One thought I put here is my idea might be incorrect or wrong. So, if that were true, what does it mean to you? It means that I will appear dumb or wrong, and then being wrong will lead to disapproval or rejection. Then it means that I will not be liked or wanted. It means that I don't belong and I'm an outsider. And then at the last sentence, I say, I'm an outsider. So even through this core belief, you can kind of see the theme is that I must have felt unwanted, or have a core belief that I'm not wanted, or I'm not, maybe even like could be from love as well, but into that category. So again, it's that basic need, right? Causing that formation of that core belief. So kind of interesting, I would say. In fact, I'll be honest, this I'm not wanted or I'm not belonging comes up quite a bit when I'm doing these type of exercises for me. So in fact, I enhanced this time a little bit more of the downward arrow to basic need. So I added a box. It is also free for download out there. So if you did this exercise or you want to, at the very bottom now, it's kind of connecting. The last question asked is which basic need may have driven this core belief. So I will demo this sheet really quickly just to show how it works. So, identify a situation that brings up negative emotions. Actually, because it's Valentine's Day or Galentine's Day and Valentine's Day tomorrow, I'm going to give one about more love related. So, this is a real one I mentioned before. Identify a situation that brings up negative emotions. I will say when my husband goes out, like for happy hour after work. And now I would say I've improved a lot from this, but I'll kind of go back in time and say how I reacted. So identify, and I remember this because I had a lot of resentment every time he goes out. And it didn't make sense because I get to go out and then he never says anything. But I was just so negative. I definitely negative thought that you had during this situation. Be like, oh, he's out again, and he's not going to come home, he's going to to come home tired and not helping out, or I might even think he just doesn't want to spend time with us and the family. To spend time with us, right? So you put that here. I know it's a misspell word. So if that were true, what does it mean to you? It means he doesn't like to spend time with us. To spend time with us. If that were true, again, it's kind of repeating, what does it mean to you? If he doesn't like to spend time with me, it means that he doesn't like me or want or love me. So that came up. If that were true, what does it mean to you that he doesn't love me? Right? So you kind of see that this theme kind of emerges. And again, I'm trying to go back in time and channel that, how I felt in the past, but I really distinctly saying like, he just doesn't love me. And simply because he's going out. In fact, that's a pattern and a thought I thought a lot, even with my parents or my mother. So if you think about it, what is that basic need and driven this core belief? It's about feeling loved, right? Again, humans need a strong sense of belonging, and love and wanted is very much a strong driver of that. So, in these situations, I remember really just really causing havoc, to be honest, in a relationship and picking fights that probably wasn't required, and then really causing a lot of stress between us. But it's because at that moment, I couldn't realize that I perceived a threat, right? And I couldn't see it. And it just kept getting more negative, and I just needed to fight. And I was in this chaotic sense until now I realize all this is that really it's about self-love. You can only be loved, just as they say, as cheesy as it sounds, you can only be loved if you love yourself first. And that's what I've been working on. Again, I don't go into kind of the doing part or that next skill, level 3, into how do we do that. Again, right now it's just kind of practice observing, because when I had got to this point 3 or 4 years ago, that I realized that my pattern of behavior was similar to how I felt about my mother. um, just seeing that for me was a pretty big revelation, because then I can try to disassociate that situation between my husband, him going out, and also my childhood, right? So that took a process. So, in any case, this series is about I said adding tools to your toolbox. I don't think there's a one size fits all. There's tons of tools out there. So I'm just kind of adding this in, and then creating worksheets for people if you find it useful to download on our site. So I've added 2 more here, 7 primal questions. Again, there's a free self assessment, pretty quick, that you can take to find out your primal questions. And then also I have this downward arrow to basic need out there as well. My future modules will include the higher level skills as we progress through. So, what's the best way to increase your skill? Just like any other skill that we learn and practice is key. So, again, most of these worksheets are free for download. It's just a way for you to practice observing, just like what I've done, and break down kind of our thoughts and feelings, so that when we go and try to change any behaviors and improve any our success, we know kind of where to channel our energy. So thank you for attending and listening. Our next episode will be about memories. So now the journey is that you've known what self-management is, what self-awareness is and the levels of that, how our brain works, and then how I also kind of tie to evolutionary, our basic needs kind of drive how our brain reacts. And then now we're going to go a little bit more probably sciencey and talking about memories and how it captures it. So that will be next week. So I hope you tune in. And definitely, if you made it this far, please subscribe. If you like this, give me a like. You can subscribe to a newsletter with show notes and to these diagrams and links to downloads at www.evo-skills.com. So I appreciate if you do that. Leave a comment you like and what you didn't like. So thank you. Sending you lots of love and hope to see you next week. So, for those who celebrate, happy Valentine's Day or happy Galentine's Day for today, and hope you have a good weekend.